Sometimes the person you trust most is the one who breaks you, but that's also when your real story begins, not with the heartbreak, but with the choice to rise, rebuild, and become someone stronger than you ever imagined. I woke up that morning with a pit in my stomach, a gut feeling I couldn't shake, like life was quietly winding up a punch I wouldn't see coming until it knocked me clean off my feet, and brother, that's exactly what happened. You know, if you looked at my life a few months ago, you would have thought I was the luckiest man alive, steady job, cozy little house just outside the city, a daughter who thought I hung the moon, and a wife who, at least from the outside, seemed like she was living the dream right there beside me. We had this system, you see, where I handled most of the home life, doctor appointments, soccer practices, bedtime stories, while she climbed her career ladder like she was on a mission straight to the stars. I didn't mind it at first, hell, I actually took a lot of pride in being that dependable guy who could juggle his work-from-home gig and still be there for his little girl every step of the way. But somewhere along the line, my wife stopped being my partner and started acting more like a roommate I occasionally ran into between her meetings and business trips. It was the small things that hit hardest, reaching for her hand during a movie only for her to casually pull away, planning a date night only for her to cancel last minute with a text about working late. Getting a half-hearted smile instead of a kiss when she walked through the door. You try not to let it get to you at first. You tell yourself it's just a phase, just a stressful season, that maybe she's carrying more than she lets on, and you've got to be patient, got to be strong. But patience has a way of bleeding into loneliness when you're always the one reaching out and coming back empty-handed. I remember standing at the kitchen sink one evening, washing dishes while she sat at the dining table, tapping away at her laptop without so much as glancing my way, and thinking to myself, when did my marriage turn into this cold, quiet thing that doesn't even look like love anymore? And even then, even as that question was burning a hole in my heart, I didn't have the slightest clue just how deep the betrayal really ran. Because when the truth finally clawed its way out, messy and ugly and unforgiving, it wasn't just the distance between us that hurt, it was realizing she hadn't just checked out of our marriage emotionally, she had packed her bags and taken her heart somewhere else. Long before I even saw it happening. The worst part? It wasn't a stranger that stole her attention. No, it was someone she worked with every day, someone who had seen the cracks in our foundation and decided to wedge himself right into the space where I used to be. And if you think that's where the story hits rock bottom, you better buckle up, because trust me, it only got worse from there. The first real warning sign that something was seriously wrong came on a random Thursday afternoon, one of those days that doesn't seem important when you wake up but ends up changing your whole damn life before you go to bed. I had just finished cleaning up lunch for our daughter and getting her down for a nap when I noticed my wife's phone buzzing on the kitchen counter, lighting up with a message that made my stomach twist in a way I couldn't explain, just a first name, no last name. No context, but something about it felt off. I know, I shouldn't have looked, it wasn't my place, but tell me you wouldn't have done the same thing if you were standing where I was, heart hammering against your ribs like it knew something your mind hadn't caught up to yet. The text said something simple, innocent if you squinted at it hard enough, thinking about you today. Miss you. And man, let me tell you, in that split second, it felt like the ground shifted under my feet, like the walls of my safe little life started groaning under the weight of something I wasn't ready to face. I didn't confront her right away because a part of me, the desperate, stupid part, wanted to believe there was some other explanation. Some reason that didn't end with my wife loving somebody else while I was folding laundry and making grilled cheese sandwiches in the house we built together. So I waited. I watched. And with every passing day, it got harder to pretend that the woman who barely touched me anymore, barely saw me anymore, wasn't already halfway out the door with another man pulling her toward a life that didn't have me in it. She started working late more often, trips that used to be 2 days away turned into 3, sometimes 4. When she was home, she was there physically but not really there. She'd scroll her phone under the covers long after I'd fallen asleep alone on my side of the bed, and every conversation between us became this careful, shallow thing. Like we were strangers trying not to step on each other's toes. I tried bringing it up once, tried to bridge the growing canyon between us with something honest, something raw. I told her I missed her. I told her I missed us. She smiled, she smiled and said I was just being needy, that she was busy and stressed and couldn't carry both her job and my feelings at the same time. I laughed it off in the moment, because what the hell else was I supposed to do, sit there and bleed all over the floor in front of her? But inside, a part of me started dying right then and there, quiet and slow, like a candle burning down to nothing while everyone in the room pretends they don't see the smoke curling toward the ceiling. The worst thing about betrayal isn't the knife in your back, it's the way you keep finding new cuts every day from the person you thought would be the last one to hurt you. And brother, those cuts were starting to bleed me dry. It happened on a night like any other, the kind of night that should have just slipped quietly into the past without leaving a mark, but instead carved itself into my memory like a scar I'll carry for the rest of my life. Our daughter had gone to bed early after an exhausting day at her friend's birthday party, and the house was wrapped in that heavy kind of silence that feels more like a warning than a comfort. My wife had gotten home late, again, tossing a distracted kiss on my cheek before disappearing into the shower like she was washing off a life she didn't want to be part of anymore. I sat on the couch, flipping through channels I wasn't really watching, thinking about how damn lonely it is to share a roof with someone who barely notices you exist. And that's when her laptop pinged from the kitchen counter, one of those dumb notification sounds that cuts through the quiet like a knife when you're already on edge. I know, again, maybe I should have left it alone, but you can't ask a drowning man to ignore the rope dangling in front of him, no matter how thin it looks. The screen was still lit up when I walked over, an email preview sitting right there in the open like a cruel joke. It wasn't from work. It was from him. The subject line hit me harder than any punch ever could, counting down the days until you're mine. My hands started shaking so bad I could barely move the mouse, but I clicked anyway because once you see the cracks, you can't stop yourself from peeking into the abyss. The email was short, but it didn't need to be long, a few lines about how he couldn't wait to start a new life with her, how he dreamed about the baby they would have together, how he wished she could just leave her complicated life behind and come be with him already. I don't remember how long I stood there reading and rereading those words, trying to make them fit into a world where my wife was still my wife and not someone else's fantasy. When she finally walked out of the bathroom, towel wrapped around her hair, skin pink from the steam, she looked at me standing there with her laptop open and her secret bleeding out all over the kitchen counter. For a second, she froze. And then, without a word, she just sighed. Not panic, not guilt, not even anger. Just tired, resigned, like she'd been waiting for me to catch up to the truth she'd already accepted a long time ago. We didn't even fight, not really. She sat down across from me, looked me straight in the eye, and said words I'll never forget. I'm pregnant. I swear to God, it felt like the world tilted sideways, like the air got sucked out of the room. Pregnant. Not with me. Not ours. I sat there, staring at her, my brain struggling to string together a single coherent thought while she calmly explained how it just happened and how she didn't plan for it and how she didn't want to hurt me. Funny how people think it's the betrayal that kills you. But it's not. It's the fact that they can sit there and break you open without even flinching. I didn't say anything that night. Not because I didn't have words, God knows there were 1,000 things I wanted to scream at her, but because every word felt like it would crumble into dust the second it left my mouth. I just stood there, breathing like a man pulling air into a set of lungs that didn't want to work anymore, while she sat at the kitchen table twirling the corner of her napkin like a kid caught cheating on a test. After a while, she mumbled something about sleeping in the guest room and she disappeared down the hall, leaving me standing there with nothing but the sound of the clock ticking way too loud on the wall. I don't remember how long I stood in that spot, but eventually I found myself sitting on the kitchen floor, back against the cabinets, staring at the fridge where our daughter's crayon drawings were taped up with colorful magnets. One picture had all three of us holding hands, big stupid smiles on our faces, the sun shining down from the corner of the page like a promise we all thought would last forever. I think that's when it really hit me. Not just the betrayal, but the fact that my daughter's world was about to crack wide open because of choices she had no part in making. It wasn't just my heart breaking. It was hers too, and she didn't even know it yet. The next morning, my wife acted like everything was normal. She got up, made coffee, packed her bag for work, didn't say a damn word about the bomb she'd dropped in our kitchen the night before. And I sat there, watching her, realizing that this woman, this stranger, wasn't going to fight for us, wasn't going to beg for forgiveness, wasn't going to try to fix what she'd shattered. She was already gone. She just hadn't moved out yet. I called out of work that day, sat on the back porch with a beer at 11 in the morning like some washed-up version of the man I used to be, trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do next. Divorce? It seemed so simple when you said the word out loud. Like you could just rip off the bandage and be done with it. But in reality, it felt like standing at the edge of a cliff with a blindfold on, knowing the fall would hurt but not knowing how deep the drop really was. I thought about my daughter, about the nights we spent building blanket forts in the living room, about how she'd climb into my lap when it stormed because she believed I could keep the thunder away just by holding her tight enough. How do you explain to a 5-year-old that sometimes love isn't enough to keep a family together? That sometimes the people you trust most are the ones who hurt you the worst? And how the hell was I supposed to keep her safe from all of this when I couldn't even keep myself from breaking? The only thing I knew for sure that day was that staying wasn't an option. Not for me. Not for her. The woman I married was gone, and all that was left behind was a version of her that didn't love me anymore. Maybe hadn't for a long damn time. It was time to start thinking about what life looked like without her. That same night, after I put our daughter to bed, I sat down at the kitchen table with a legal pad and a pen, staring at the blank page like it might somehow map out the road I didn't know how to walk yet. I started writing down everything I could think of. Bank accounts, the mortgage, daycare schedules, custody possibilities. Every little thread that tied our lives together. Threads I was about to start untangling whether I was ready or not. It felt cold and mechanical, but weirdly, it gave me something to focus on besides the knot of grief sitting heavy in my chest. I wasn't just a man heartbroken anymore. I was a father with a responsibility bigger than my own hurt. Around 10, I heard her come in through the garage, kicking her shoes off like she didn't have a care in the world. Like the walls weren't caving in around us both. She didn't even glance my way as she passed through the kitchen. Heading straight upstairs like this was any other Wednesday night and not the eve of our marriage burning down to ashes. I don't know what snapped in me then. Maybe it was all the months of being ignored, all the nights lying awake wondering where I went wrong. But I found myself standing at the bottom of the stairs, voice low but shaking, calling out her name. She stopped halfway up, one hand on the banister, and turned to look at me like I was a stranger asking her for spare change. "I want a divorce," I said. 3 words. 3 stupid, heavy words that echoed through the house louder than any shouting match ever could have. For a long moment, she just stared at me, like she was trying to process what I said in slow motion. And then, would you believe it? She laughed. Not a big laugh, not a belly laugh, but this dry, humorless little chuckle like she couldn't believe I actually had the nerve to say it out loud. "What about our daughter?" she said, voice sharp as broken glass. I think that was the moment I realized we weren't just 2 people who had fallen out of love. We were on opposite sides now, and there wasn't going to be a peaceful middle ground where we could sit down and make nice for old time's sake. I told her the truth, that I wasn't trying to take our daughter away from her, but that I was going to fight like hell to make sure she had a stable home, a safe place where she wasn't caught in the crossfire of her parents' failures. She didn't say much after that, just nodded slowly and kept walking up the stairs, leaving me standing there in the dark kitchen with a cold cup of coffee and 1,000 broken pieces of a life I didn't know how to fix anymore. I stayed at that table until the sun came up, making lists, erasing things, starting over, planning the logistics of tearing my world in half so I could at least keep some small part of it intact for the sake of my little girl. Because when everything else was gone, the love, the trust, the future I thought we were building, she was still there. And if there was one thing I was damn sure of, it was that I wasn't going to let her become collateral damage in a war she never asked to be part of. It wasn't even a week later when we told our daughter. I sat her down on the couch, her tiny legs swinging over the edge, still wearing her princess pajamas with the glittery tiara printed on the front, and I felt my heart rip clean in half before I even opened my mouth. My wife, or I guess I should just say her mother now because that's how it felt, sat stiff and silent next to me, letting me do all the talking like she had nothing to say about the world we were about to tear apart for this little girl. I told her that Mommy and Daddy weren't going to live together anymore, that it wasn't her fault, that we both loved her more than anything in the world and always would. She didn't cry, not right away. She just looked at me with those big trusting eyes and asked if we could still watch movies together on Fridays, if we could still go get ice cream after soccer practice, if she could still have 2 parents who loved her even if they lived in different houses. And I swore to her, with every broken piece of my heart, that she could. She hugged me tighter than she ever had before, and I think that was the first time I realized that love isn't about the big gestures or the perfect pictures, it's about showing up even when it hurts like hell, about being the steady thing in the middle of a storm. After she went to bed, her mother and I sat at the kitchen table again, staring at each other across the wreckage of our life. She said she wanted to stay in the house at least until the baby came, said it would be easier on our daughter to keep things familiar. I didn't argue. I didn't have the energy to fight about furniture and mortgage payments when the real battles were already raging inside me. Instead, I started looking for a place of my own, a 2-bedroom condo about 20 minutes away, close enough that I could still pick my daughter up from school, take her to soccer, be there for the moments that mattered. The realtor was nice enough, kept talking about how the place had great bones and lots of potential, and all I could think about was how sad it was that I was starting my life over in a place picked not for dreams but for necessity. I signed the lease with a shaking hand and a heart that felt hollowed out. First night alone in that empty condo, I sat on the bare floor with a six-pack of cheap beer and stared at the walls, wondering how the hell it all went so wrong. I thought about the man I used to be, the one who believed in forever, in vows, in second chances, and I realized that guy was gone. Not dead, maybe, but changed in a way that would never fully heal. The betrayal wasn't just about the cheating. It was about the choices. The quiet, everyday choices she made to put someone else ahead of me, ahead of our daughter, ahead of the life we promised to build together. And now, sitting in that cold, empty condo with nothing but my own ragged breathing for company, I made a choice too. I wasn't going to be the man who stayed bitter. I wasn't going to be the man who let one broken love story define the rest of his life. I was going to find a way to rebuild. For my daughter. For myself. For the man I knew I could still be even if he looked a little different now. The first few weeks living alone were a special kind of quiet, not peaceful, not freeing, but this hollow, aching kind of silence that made you hear every single thing you'd rather not think about. I'd wake up before the sun sometimes, the condo still dark, and just sit there at the edge of the bed, wondering how a man could be so tired and still feel like he hadn't even started the hard part yet. The loneliness was brutal at first, the way the house creaked at night without another set of footsteps, the way dinner felt pointless when it was just you and a microwaved meal on a paper plate. But you know what they don't tell you about starting over? It's not just about losing everything. It's about finding pieces of yourself you didn't even realize you'd buried under the wreckage of a life you outgrew. I started running again, long slow jogs around the neighborhood where no one knew me, where no one looked at me like they were waiting to see if I would break down. I picked up my guitar after years of letting it gather dust, fumbling my way through old songs until my fingers remembered what it was like to make something that wasn't about pain. I started cooking real meals again, not because there was someone else to feed, but because I deserved better than fast food and pity. Little by little, I built something, not a new life yet, but the bones of one. Something that belonged to me and no one else. My daughter adjusted quicker than I thought she would. Kids are like that, man, a heartbreak resilient in a way adults forget how to be. She loved picking out a new bedspread for her room at my place, loved helping me hang her artwork on the walls, loved that I let her eat ice cream straight from the pint when she stayed over on Fridays. We made traditions, her and I, movie nights with popcorn fights, pancake Sundays where half the batter ended up on the floor, long lazy afternoons building forts out of couch cushions and blankets. And every time she laughed, that real, full-bellied kid laughter that comes from deep inside, it stitched a little piece of my broken heart back together. Meanwhile, her mother stayed mostly distant. Our communication was reduced to quick texts about school pickups and doctor appointments, clipped and professional like we were business partners who barely tolerated each other. I found out through mutual friends that the guy she left me for wasn't exactly the white knight she had imagined. He wasn't showing up for her the way she thought he would. Apparently he was still partying, still living like he didn't have a damn clue what real commitment looked like. I won't lie to you, there was a dark, ugly satisfaction in hearing that. But mostly, I just felt sorry for her. Not because she got burned, but because she threw away a life filled with love and loyalty for a fantasy that couldn't survive the daylight. I don't hate her. I thought I would, but I don't. I'm just sad for both of us. For what could have been. For the version of our lives that never got to happen. But sadness isn't the same thing as regret. Not anymore. Because every day that I woke up in that little condo, every day that I made breakfast for my daughter and listened to her chatter about school and soccer and cartoons, every day that I ran until my lungs burned and my heart felt strong again, I realized I hadn't lost everything. I had saved something too. I had saved myself. The first spring in the new place felt different, like the world was finally letting me breathe again after holding my head underwater for so damn long. The trees outside my window turned this wild, reckless green, and the air smelled like fresh rain and second chances, like maybe life wasn't done with me yet, even if it sure as hell tried to be. My daughter and I planted a little vegetable garden on the balcony, just a couple of cheap plastic pots filled with dirt and hope, but watching those tiny green shoots push up through the soil felt like some kind of small miracle I didn't even know I needed. It wasn't perfect, not by a long shot. There were days when the loneliness crept back in like a slow-moving fog, days when the silence still cut deeper than I wanted to admit, days when I saw a family at the park laughing together and felt that old familiar ache twist in my chest. But there were more good days than bad now. And that's something. Sometimes healing doesn't come in one big sweeping moment. Sometimes it comes in tiny victories, like folding a load of laundry without feeling like it's the end of the world, like cooking a meal just because you want to eat something that tastes good, like laughing at a stupid meme your buddy sends you without feeling guilty for smiling. One evening, I was helping my daughter with her homework, sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, papers scattered everywhere, when she looked up at me with that crooked little smile of hers and said, "Daddy, you're really good at being happy." And man, I damn near lost it right there. Because for the first time in a long time, I realized it was true. Not every minute, not every hour, but piece by piece, I was finding my way back to a version of myself I thought had been buried under all the wreckage. A man who could love and laugh and build a life worth waking up for. I still don't know what the future holds. Maybe someday I'll fall in love again. Maybe I won't. Maybe life's biggest blessings aren't about the grand romances or the picture-perfect families. Maybe they're about the small, stubborn kind of joy you build with your own two hands, even after the world has tried to break you. And if there's one thing I know for damn sure, it's this. I'm not done yet. Not even close. The story didn't end when she left. It just started a new chapter, and this time I'm writing it for me. For my daughter. For the life we're building, one messy, beautiful, ordinary day at a time. Because sometimes getting your heart broken isn't the end. Sometimes it's the beginning of something better than you ever dared to imagine.